All right, so today it's the day that we talk about interview practice, and I wanted to touch briefly, or I wanted to talk about today about last time we had this call. We recorded an episode about a session, not an episode. That we recorded a session about interviews. It was more about the particular questions you can ask to kind of gauge how try to figure out green flags and red flags from the employer as best as we can, right? Like as I always say, you don't know how good, like how cool a job is until you actually sit down and work it, because it may come down to factors like even your boss, right? Like I always say, like it could be that the employer itself is horrible, it's terrible, but you happen to work for like the one cool boss that the entire company has. And so for you, it's like you live in a bubble. It doesn't matter that the rest of the company's trash. Like you are like protected, right? And it could be the opposite, right? It could always be the opposite. The company could look very good, very promising, all green flags. Then you sit down at your job the first day, and it turns out that your boss is terrible. And so it doesn't matter that the company's great. Your boss is what basically determines things. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't try to identify red flags or green flags in the process, right? In the different stages of the process as best we can. So this is basically like me retreading a little bit of the last time that we spoke about job interviews. This time I want to talk about two things basically. I want to cover the cliche questions, right? Like these are questions that you kind of like have to know, like you have to have a prepared answer for. It's always the same question. Like, not necessarily every job interview will have all these questions. And it could even be that some rare job interviews don't have any of these questions at all. Like they're not doing cliche questions. They're doing their own thing. But these are generally the ones that you just have to you basically have to have a script. Once you get your script on the thing, the thing that you believe works the best, and that you can remember right easily, because you're not going to be here's the thing, right? Like here's the trick. You have to come up with answers for these cliche questions that the answers themselves are not cliche, and they're not so off the cuff, let's put it like that. They're not so hipster. Your answer's not so weird that you weird out the other person. Like the people asking these cliche questions, and we'll get into them in a second. They're looking. It's a very paradox. It's a paradox, right? Like it's paradoxical that they ask cliche questions and they're expecting genuine answers. But in a sense, it's the best tactic is to give them a sort of genuine answer, at least one that is not canned, one is that is not cliche necessarily, one that comes like you have to draw from your own experience and just give it something, have that personal touch, right? That you can give it, right? But that we help you phrase it in a way that it doesn't hurt you in the process. Because remember, key thing, employers, when they're hiring, right, like when they're interviewing, they want somebody that's very consistent. They don't want a weirdo. They like a little bit of personality, right? Like they like you smiling, they like you being friendly, that sort of stuff, being eloquent. But they don't like it when you're like a weird guy or not weird guy even. Like you just have like a little bit too many explanations, or like you're too eccentric. They don't like that stuff, right? So you have to, for these cliche questions, which again I'll go over in a second, but you probably know most of them. You have to start thinking on in this frame of mind, right? Like you have to start having developing your answers, and once you develop your own answers for this, and once you develop the answers for this, then you can just basically, it's like a script, right? They'll run automatically every time that you ask this question. It's come up. Now it's a matter of like perfecting your delivery, right? Like once you have what you want to say, it's just a matter of like, I just got to practice the way I say it. I got to say it with a smile. I got to be charming while I say it. And so that's enough preface. Let's do our quick exercise. I'll ask one of the questions, and I want you guys in the chat to give me your response. Like, how would you respond to this? Okay. And if you already have a script that you already use, right, like something that that has been proven to work in your case, please share it as well. Like, you don't have to come up with something new, right? So before we get started, I just want to make sure that everybody understands what we're going to do. I'm going to ask you the question here. I want to see what what your potential answer in an interview would be via text. And then after we're done with this exercise, I'll rate your answer, right? I'll give you some guidance. Then after we are done with this exercise, I want to talk a little bit about resumes and the subject of embellishing resumes, okay? But for now, let's do this quick exercise, okay? So first, once again, I almost forget again. Just press 1 to know that you're ready, that you're ready to understand, to answer the questions, that you understand what we're about to do. All right, so we got a bunch of ones. We got a bunch of ones. We got 2. One more one and we'll start. Okay. All right, perfect. So first question, okay? This is probably the worst question. It's the most unfair question, and it's the one that you have to have probably the best answer prepared for, right? What's your greatest weakness, right? So that's the question. How would you answer what's your greatest weakness? Let's see. You're gonna type your what you would answer in the chat, and then we'll rate it. I'll give you some advice. What's your greatest weakness? I can tell by the time that it's taken you to respond that you did not have an answer prepared for this, which is, it's okay. That's why you're here. My greatest weakness is that I am too blunt. Okay. Not being assertive. Times trying to be too much of a perfectionist. Okay. I tend to look for a solution when sometimes the situation doesn't call for it. Oh, that's very interesting. Have you used that before, or did you think about that just now? Like you had like an honest introspection moment and came up with that? I've used a version of it. Okay, that's great. I think we can. The other guys are taking a little bit too long, so maybe they're not able to respond. So let's take the answers that we already got. So let's start with my greatest weakness is that I'm too blunt. This is good. This is not bad, but precisely because you're too blunt, you are phrasing it in a way that may be off-putting. People don't want to work with people that are too blunt, right? What you can say, I have sort of the same problem as well. So I've worked a particular way of phrasing this, right? That doesn't sound like, oh, I'm just too blunt, right? Like I just hurt people's feelings. So what I say is like a better way to, because, okay, so now let me get into how to rephrase the answers, right? You can give, these questions are terrible, by the way. They're cliche questions. They suck. It's unfair that somebody asks you what your greatest weakness is, like, right? Like you don't go into the job interview asking the employer, hey, what's your greatest weakness as an employer, right? Like, oh, we are a sweatshop. Like sometimes we overexploit our employees. Like it's a complete, but it's the game, right? Like you got to play the game. All right. So going back to the answers, you want the answers to be, again, because you don't want them to be cliche, because they're getting these questions from the internet, right? Like these are like, or from a manual, right? Like they are cliche questions. They have cliche answers. So if you give the cliche answer, you're not scoring points in the interview, right? So like the interview is like a game where you're like scoring points, impressing people, right? Like you can think about it this way. It's like every question they ask you, it's like a play, and you can like do, you can take the play that they had and like turn it into like a home run or like a touchdown or something, right? Like it's like they're throwing a ball at you and you hit it, and it can be a foul ball, or it can be a hit, or it can be, like whatever, a home run, etc. Right? Like you're trying to maximize, they're throwing you balls, you're trying to maximize the amount of points you score per ball thrown. Okay, so if they ask you a cliche answer and you give a cliche answer, you wasted this opportunity. You scored no points. Like you didn't necessarily commit a foul, right? Like you didn't necessarily like scored against yourself, right? Like an own goal or something like that. but it was a missed opportunity. Okay, so again, these are all good answers because they seem genuine, except and I'm not trying to pick on you, Rob, but the perfectionist one seems like one of those cliche answers. All right, but that's fine because that's what we're here for. We're here to work through our instincts, our answers for this. So let me get back to the I'm too blunt. So I have the same problem. Sometimes I'm too direct when I'm talking. So the way I've rephrased it, because you want to rephrase it in a way that sounds, again, not cliche, genuine, scoring points. And the way you score, the way you scored the point is by making it seem non-threatening, right? Like it's like you're a guy, like you're just a sensitive guy that has some introspection, but your weakness, your problems are not going to cause the company a problem. You're not going to raise problems working with others. That's just like it's non-threatening, right? And the way to say you're too blunt, non-threatening way is just to say something like, sometimes I want to make up. This is what I say, by the way. Literally, when they ask me this question, this is what I say. This is my script. Sometimes I'm too I like talking, right? And I like getting my point across. And sometimes when I'm trying to get my point across, it sometimes seems like I don't care what others think, right? Like I'm not paying attention to what others are saying or what others think about the conversation because I'm trying to get my point across. But that's really not the case. I'm interested in whatever, not in whatever, right? Like I'm interested in everything, whatever, in the opinions of others. I care about others, but I just have this thing where it's like, it's like a train station, right? Like the train of thought leaves the station. It has to arrive at the other station. So sometimes I've been told I come off as too direct, right? But again, that's not my intention at all. I'm actually very, what's the word? I'm blanking on the word here. I'm very, it's not cordial. It's whatever, like some version of like, I'm actually interested in the opinions of others, which by the way is true. Like I'm not like this answer that I came up with, this script, it's all true. I do sometimes just have to finish a point, right? And I interrupt and I don't let other people talk, but it's not because I don't care about what others are saying. It's just that I have this thing where it's like, the train left the station, it has to arrive at its destination. And once it arrives at its destination, we can have whatever conversations about anything you want, right? So I found that this is a way to rephrase this, like I'm too blunt, okay? So now the next answer was that not being assertive. And this again is good, but if you just say like, oh, I'm not assertive, you come off as kind of like weak, right? And so it's funny because employers do want you to not be assertive. Employers don't care about you being assertive, but they have convinced themselves that they want assertive employees. They want assertive workers. It's not true. They just basically need a slave. They just basically need somebody that will do whatever is asked of them without raising a ruckus. But they don't want you saying that. They don't want you saying like, oh, I'm too submissive and I'm too good at following directions. It's just off-putting, right? Like they want that. That's what they want, but it's like a faux pas. Like it's not polite to phrase it like that. So if you say like, oh, I'm not assertive, again, it's not bad, but I would phrase it another way. I would say something like, sometimes I believe in something. Like I think I believe things should be done a particular way, but I'm blanking on the word again. AJ, what's the word that? What's the personality trait that we always discuss? And I always forget the word. It starts with a C. It starts with agreeable. That's the word. It starts with a C. It starts with an A. I'm completely lost. Yeah, agreeable. So you can say like the way to kind of like gain points on the I'm not assertive. It's like you sell them what they actually want. They want somebody that's agreeable. They want somebody that is not assertive, right? That's what, again, here's the problem. They don't want assertive people. They want you to be submissive, follow instructions, don't be too crazy, be consistent, right? But they want they want people believing that they want like free thinkers and like assertive people. It's not true. So the way to score points, again, remember the thing about the ball game, they're throwing balls at you. You can either kind of squander the points or score some points or many, many points. The way to like home run with this not being assertive is throwing it back at them. Like, oh, I'm actually like, I sometimes I strongly believe in a particular course of action or something, right? Like some measure that needs to be taken. but maybe the team doesn't agree so much with that particular take. And I'm very agreeable. I'm very open with people, and I like I like to have people feel comfortable, right? Like I like making people feel comfortable. So because I'm agreeable, sometimes I don't pursue this beliefs that I have regarding a direction that we should take. And that way you're signaling to them, oh, this is an agreeable guy, but he's also smart. He has ideas. He has he has some ideas sometimes, but he's not gonna be like like a Dr. House that's like he's just rude and like trying to impose his will on everybody, right? Like that way you hit it out of the park because you're signaling exactly what they want. They want somebody that will just sit quiet, play ball with others, be agreeable. So don't say I'm not assertive. Say I'm agreeable. All right. Next is at times trying to be too much a perfectionist. So I mean, maybe this is true for you. Like maybe you are answering, you're not giving a cliche answer. The problem is that it looks like the cliche answer to this question. This saying that you're too much of a perfectionist when you're an employee, right? Like when you're Elon Musk, you can openly say like, oh, I'm too much of a perfectionist or something like. When you own the company, that can be a weakness. Okay. When you're like an employee, what it signals is either that you're lying, right? Like that you're full of shit, right? Like you're just responding the cliche answer, which is it's basically saying like, oh, I work too hard. Like saying I'm too much of a perfectionist is like, oh, sometimes I work too hard. It's like I'm too given to my employer. Like I work so much for that is my greatest weakness, that I'm such a hard worker, right? Like it comes off kind of, it's not exactly like that, but it comes off as that. And I'm not saying like if you are like that, then you gave an honest answer. Now the way to flip it, right? The way to kind of score points with this is saying something like that. Let me think. Like don't talk about being a perfectionist. But you can talk about sometimes you're too passionate about. Well, no, that comes off as self-serving as well. I was going to say you're too passionate about your work. Don't say that. But you can say something like sometimes. Actually, it's just that it's not a good answer. So I don't know how to frame it in a way. Like just don't say that. Come up with something else. Honestly, maybe I'll think off the cuff. I can't think of a way of rephrasing it. Because usually the first instinct is to just like, no, go for something else. Like, because it's too hard to kind of like flip that you're too much of a perfectionist, because it seems like the only ways that I'm coming up with, I'm not saying it's impossible, the ways that I'm coming up with off the cuff are all versions of like, I work too hard. This is why this is probably all the versions of like, I'm too, I'm a hard worker, that sort of stuff. I'm a perfectionist, I'm a workaholic. Like these are all particularly weak answers. Like you're hitting, you're not even hitting the ball. I think like you're getting a strike basically at this point. So maybe I'll post it in the feed if I come up with a way of rephrasing a perfectionist. But right now I'm kind of blanking because it's one of the cliche answers that they are looking for. That is bad. All right. So let's go with Mark. I tend to look for a solution when sometimes the situation doesn't call for it. This is a softer version, and maybe this is the way to phrase the other one. I think actually reading this, what you posted here, Mark, I think this is actually a very good way of saying that you're a perfectionist. Sometimes I tend to look for solutions when sometimes the situation doesn't necessarily recall my involvement. This is a lot. It's still kind of close to what we're talking about, but it's a lot. It doesn't sound self-serving. It doesn't sound like, oh, I work too much. I love work. I'm a workaholic. Like I work until things are ready, and like that sort of stuff. Like this, I think this actually is the flip side right now of the perfectionist answer. These are like the mirror opposites, like or the transformation of the other one. I tend to look for solutions when sometimes the situation doesn't call for it. You can even add something like, I try to find individual solutions when maybe raising my hand and bringing it up with the team is a faster way. I'd say even this twist that I just gave it gives you a little bit more points because you're talking that, hey, I can work a lot, by myself, which is good. I can also work in groups, but I'm not like I'm not like cattle, like oh, just like I'll do whatever you tell me. Like no, sometimes like I'm smart enough to work on my own, and sometimes a problem of me working on my own is that I can't find, I should raise my hand sooner, right? Like and bring it up to the team instead of trying to find the solution myself. So that's something that I'm working on. That's very good. That's a very good answer that you came up with yourself. Um, yeah. Oh, you gave another version. Basically, sometimes it's better to listen than to try to solve. This is again like another version of like, yeah. Sometimes I need to bring it to my team, see what they say, instead of me trying to solve it by my own. And yeah, and so AJ is making a great point here that saying agreeable, that you're agreeable, is better than conflict averse or not assertive. He's 100% correct. So that's why I was struggling to remember that word, but that's the word that you want to use when trying to say that you're not assertive, or that you are, not prone to conflict or fights with others. That you want to say that you're agreeable, right? And that way, when you say that you are agreeable, you can also say the opposite in a way. Remember what I said earlier, like the answer that I use, because I'm too blunt, too direct. And so like, and the more jobs that I've gotten, it's kind of like the less of a shit I give. And so like, the more I give direct answers, and like the less I care about being not cordial. I'm always cordial, but the less I think, the less I care about like appearances and like, what other people may think about my opinion, about what I want to do, what I think is right. But I am agreeable. It's true. I am an agreeable person. I don't like people feeling uncomfortable. And while I have this like I don't give a crap attitude, I also, it's like, well, but if I hurt you, like my intention was not to hurt you. Like my intention was not to kind of like run you over. But it's kind of like your opinion was kind of dumb. So when you say that you're agreeable, because it's not a cliche yet to say you're agreeable, that you're agreeable. It shows that you have introspection about who you are, how you are. And it allows you to say the opposite, because you say like, I'm actually like what I just said, like I'm agreeable, but sometimes I run people over with my opinions, but it's not my intention. I want everybody to be happy. Yeah. So next question, you definitely wouldn't mention anything regarding skill you may feel you lack or experience. I assume, yeah. So you don't want to make this is a great point. Thanks for bringing it up. You definitely don't want to say anything or phrase anything as if you're lacking something. Okay, you always want to phrase it as if you have something, right? Like I am, again, the example, the go-to example. I am agreeable. It's not that I lack assertiveness, is that I am agreeable. So you always want to phrase it as you have something, right? And this something has consequences. And you're aware of the consequences, right? And because you're aware of the consequences, well, sometimes you strive towards not producing the negative consequences. This is basically the framework, right? I've just given you the framework of how to answer these questions without giving you the answer, right? Like this is kind of like me teaching you how to fish, right? Like think about these questions. It's like you don't want to talk about what you lack. You want to talk about what you have and the consequences of what you have, and you being aware of the consequences for this. So therefore, you're striving to minimize the negative consequences. This is the framework for answering this particular question. Okay, so this took a lot of time because this question is terrible, so it merits a lot of time. So next question, it's getting asked less and less, and the reason I'll explain after I say it, right? So next question is, where do you see yourself in 5 years? So how would you answer this? Like, where do you see yourself in 5 years? This is a lot less controversial than the previous one because this is basically like a one right answer. I'm exaggerating. There's multiple possible answers. But let's see if somebody gets the nail on the head. How would you answer that? Like, how do you see yourself in 5 years? While you answer that question, let me explain why this is not this former cliche question is no longer, or this used to be a very popular question. Now it's not as much, and the reason is because nobody lasts 5 years in anywhere. Employers are not honoring their part of the deal and the full employment, the full-time employment, and what it means to have people dependent. This is why you guys are here, and this is in the job stacking program, because you've somehow been victim of this tendency of employers just like they don't, they see you as a number, they don't invest in you, so they don't really care anymore about where you'll be in 5 years. So this question does come up once in a while, but it used to be a staple in every interview maybe 10 years ago. Now I rarely see it when I interview for jobs. Nobody cares where you will be in 5 years. No answer? Growing, Mark, you're a pro, Mark. Growing with a team and learning from an. Are you using ChatGPT? Why are you cheating, Mark? Don't cheat. There's no there's no oh my God, there's nothing to be gained by cheating with ChatGPT. This is just an exercise. I'm not going to grade you. There's no grades for this, Mark. All right, so Mark says, growing with a team on learning from my manager, then eventually getting to manage the team after learning about leadership from my manager. This is great. This is perfect. Leading a team of dynamic individuals while also contributing to company success. Sure, like all these answers are great, but remember, I mean, you're given it via text. You're gonna when you get asked that question, just remember, don't answer as if you're reading it, right? Like just say something that comes more natural. Right. I mean, this is it. Like, this is the one, like I said, like, this is the one right answer. Like, you always want to be moving forward. You don't want to say like, oh, I just see myself doing the same thing, even though if that's what you want, right? So, for instance, what I say is something like, well, in my case, it's because I'm in IT, right? Like, again, I'm an automation engineer. There's always the issue of like, do you remain like a coder, like a guy that's writing code, like it's in the trenches, or do you evolve to like management, technical, technical lead, that sort of stuff? This is a particular situation for workers in IT. So my answer is always that I really enjoy, which is, well, I don't enjoy coding, but whatever. I enjoy my work, the technical side, right? Like I really like it. So, but I've been exploring, maybe taking a little bit more of a leadership position, right? But I could see myself either way, like still working 5 years, maybe still working on the technical side, but I could also see myself, become taking a more hands-on or leadership position, either on the technical side or on the human side. That's my answer. Again, that is very particular to IT. So not all of you can use this version. So the ones that the ones in the chat are perfect, right? Like you always want to be like, yeah, in 5 years, I see myself as a leader. It's kind of like, I think about this answer, this question about how how people when like reincarnation is in fashion, and people are talking about reincarnation, and everybody's kind of like, oh, in my past, like everybody's talking about their past lives or whatever, and everybody in the past, nobody was ever a peasant or a slave or like died of like exposure to the elements. Like everybody's like, oh, I was the Duke of whatever, and I was like this petty noble. Like it's kind of like this. It's like, oh, everybody in the future wants to be a leader, but there's not enough leadership positions. Like not everybody can be a leader. So it's kind of like, again, this is kind of like why they're not asking the question. We got a last minute answer. In the next 5 years, I see myself taking out responsibilities to help improve the productivity of the company. This is a bit too on the nose. Like in 5 years, I see myself making tons of money for you, my employer. You don't want to sound like that. I think just stick to the, like, you want to grow in responsibility and leadership and that sort of stuff. Like you're happy where you are, but you're considering growing in leadership. Again, I can think about, I don't know. I make the connection. Like past lives, everybody is a duke. It's a feudal lord, a prince, a princess. Everybody in the future is a leader, is a manager, leading dynamic teams, increasing productivity. Like this is ridiculous, but that's the answer. All right, next question. So why do you want to work here? Why do you want to work here? How would you answer this question? This question is asked. They still want to know why you want to work here. And we all know why we want to work in any place. It's because we need money and they're hiring, basically. We need money and they're hiring. I'm definitely going to get the Jeopardy music to go along with this. All right, let's go with Mark, who's the MVP of answering cliche questions. He's I say that unironically. You've done very well, like all your answers. All right, the prospect of contributing to a company that is in line with my core values is what attracts me to your company. Reputable company plus aligns with my values. Yeah, I mean, what are you gonna tell you? You got to talk about aligns with your values. You can also give them a little bit of, compliment them if they're like offering a fully remote position right off the bat. You can talk about like, in this current climate where everybody's kind of like, which is not true by the way, but you got to say it because everybody believes it's true. But every company's like scrambling to go back to the office. It's refreshing to see an employer that has the trust and the maturity to trust enough in its employees to offer fully remote. I'm not telling you to necessarily say that. The prospect of, you got to say the value stuff. All right. I'm glad that you guys know about this. But yeah, the unique twist is what I'm telling you. Like, you can give them compliments on the fact, because that also, so let me explain a little bit of the logic behind it, or why don't just go with the cliche answers, because you want to take the opportunity to make them feel good about the fact that they're offering remote work. You want to send the signal as you can to the market, in whatever small outreach that you may have. Right? You're not going to save the world, like you're not going to change the entire job market by yourself, but in the small amounts of influence that you may have, you can send signals, right? So if you give them a compliment for having remote opportunities, that kind of reinforces the fact that they feel like it's the correct choice. On the other hand, like for instance, if you're working, like if you're on the job hunt and like you're getting hit with a bunch of like the hybrid. I know we have a guide on how to turn hybrid jobs into remote, and I know I said you don't want to necessarily reject every hybrid job, but like there are points where you do want to reject some of the jobs, and you want to make it clear that it's like, because it's not fully remote. Like, I'm sorry, I'm only looking for fully remote opportunities, right? Maybe this is not the right market to do that. Again, you want to be open to hybrid you want to be open to job listings, to job postings that are advertised as remote, as hybrid, but that may be convertible to fully remote right now. But in another, if the market has like a boom right now, and like maybe we can talk a little bit about that after the election, right? Things seem a little bit more promising for the economy in the next couple of years. It seems like I don't know what's going to happen, right? But it seems that way. Maybe you can start sending that message of like, yeah, I don't like you because you're not offering fully remote, and that's what we want, right? Like, let them feel the sting of getting rejected because they're not offering fully remote. But on the other hand, if you do find a remote company, you want to like praise them on that. Like, you want to give them compliments. So like, yeah, it's very cool of you to offer fully remote opportunities. And how about mentioning the company has a top reputation in the industry? If they do, then that's great. If they don't, you're kind of gonna look like a fool. It's like, top reputation where, right? Because companies kind of know their own reputation. They're not that stupid. So if they are like a top employer, or they have any kind of like award of like anything that they post on their website about they got this award for being a great employer, whatever, you can use that. If they don't have any of that, then don't bring it up, because it's just going to be weird. It's like, what are you talking about? So it's like, I don't know, like meeting like an author of a book and telling them you love their book or something, and then they ask you like which one, and you answer like, I don't know. It's like, yeah, I love that you're in a top reputation in your industry. Really? Like, where do you hear that? Oh, I don't know. I don't know where I read it. This other question, and so you should have something prepared for this, and almost like a script, but don't make it sound like a script, okay? Not right now, but I'm just telling you, this type of question does merit some kind of like you writing it down. Why should we hire you? Or conversely, what do you bring to the table, right? How would you answer this live in an interview? I'm a hard worker and I bring value. Daniel, no, I don't like that answer. Engage to a company's vision with a willingness to learn. I don't like that answer either. I'm going to explain why I don't like them. That's it. Nobody else has something. That's fine. I can explain why these two. All right, we got another one. You could hire anyone with extensive experience like mine, but I bring a unique passion for contributing to humanity. No, see, no. Fail now. No. See, this is a trick question. I'm going to explain what the trick is. Remember how earlier with all the other questions I told you, you have to phrase things in a way that seemed like they benefit the employer, or that, again, like saying like, oh, I have this that creates this situation, right? Like, well, I have this that benefits, right? Like, one of the outcomes of this is this benefit, or like phrase it in a way where it's not like at least non-threatening to the company. This is like the one question where you want to make it about yourself. This is the one question where all the answers that are like, oh, I'm just going to make you so much money, company, or I'm going to work so hard for you. I'm going to like forget about my wife and kids because I'm just going to be so dedicated to you. I love you, company. That's all those questions, all those type of answers, like the ones that you've given here. I'm a hard worker and bring value, dedication to the company's vision. Like maybe we can, rephrase this, but dedication to the company's vision and a willingness. No. This is the one where you want to like kind of like puff your chest a little bit, like, oh, I'm without again sounding too like you want to like close the deal too hard, like you're pressuring them too hard, right? This is the one question where you want to make it about yourself, your experience, like you what makes you unique, right? Like what makes you unique, right? And so you don't want to say, I bring value to the company. What value do you bring to the company? And don't make it, the answer shouldn't be like, oh, I'm going to bring, even if you know that you're going to bring X, again, I'm going to make the company $1 million. Well, I guess if you know you're going to make $1 million, but it's like, they're not going to believe you, right? Like they haven't hired you yet. You want to make it about you, like your unique experience. It's like, like when you hire me as an individual, you're getting a unique, some sort of unique combination of experience and expertise in the field, and know exactly like the pain point. Like I've been in the situation that you're in before, and I've been able to navigate teams, the team past the hurdles that you have, right? And so maybe the problem, again, this is a trick question because I asked that without context, right? Like this would be asking some sort of after some like wouldn't be asked, like it wouldn't be the first question that they ask you, something like that. It would be after a conversation where you have gotten the chance to ask questions about the situation. But you basically want to make you want to, and this is where I can't give you like a ready-made answer, because it has to be unique to you. You have to come up with some sort of pitch that you throw, that you give them. You don't throw the pitch. This is a pitch that you don't throw. This is very funny. It's a pitch that you propose to them of why they should hire you, and it shouldn't be about all the cool things, like all the generic value that you're going to bring to the company, or like how much of a hard worker you are, like how much you're aligned with the company's vision. It has to be something about you. So, for instance, like I was recently interviewed by like a Christian company. I'm very Catholic. And so I was able to like genuinely respond to this saying like, it's like, I'm in a world like the secular world where like every company that, hires me has like some sort of like whatever vision, like it doesn't have a greater purpose. It's just about money. Like, I'm actually looking for, like, I would really appreciate, like I would be, like I'm eager to like use all my expertise to help like an actual Christian company succeed. So something like that, where you do close with something that you're providing the company in a sense, but this is the one question where you don't make it necessarily about them, unless it's something so how do I say it? Like I want, again, like the Christian company, right? Like something where it's like so genuine that it just like, it's okay to say it, right? Like it's okay to be cringe and cliche when it's genuine, like when it's true, and then it's genuine for both parties. All right. When it's genuine for both parties, it's not cringe. All right. That's the thing. So the problem with most of these questions is that the company is not genuine. So they don't care. They don't care about you. They don't even care about what they do. It's just money, right? Like if they could like snap their fingers, change everything that they do to make more money, right? Like they make more money instantly, no cost to them, they would do it, right? Like they don't really care. But when it's something that is, again, so that's when you give kind of like a genuine answer, right? Too genuine, it seems cringe. Or when you give too much of a non-genuine answer, it's also cringe, right? Because you're both not being genuine. So that's why it's like you have to find that balance between genuine. Like that's why I'm always telling you. Remember, I'm telling you, for every question here, you have to come up with your answer, right? Like I can only give you the framework and like kind of like the do's and don'ts, right? But you have to come up with the framework of your own answer. And this is the main question to do that. Like this is the question where this is the one where you make it less about them, more about you. The others is the opposite. It's very paradoxical. And like the questions that are about them, you make it more about yourself. Like that's our tendency. We make it about ourselves. And the question that is about you, like the one that where you're supposed to like sell yourself, oh, then it's like, oh, I love your company. Like, oh, I'm just like, we would be so aligned, company, you and I. And so, yeah, so that's, let me see. I have an intention to detail, which has been recognized and appreciated by my past employers and clients. I mean, if you can back it up, that's great. So this last question is not bad. So hopefully I'm getting through. Do you guys, is it clear what I'm talking about, especially with this last question? If it's clear, if you have any more questions regarding this, let me know. If it's clear, I wanna jump over before because it's almost we got like 10 minutes. I want to jump really quickly to explain to you why or when lying on your resume is not actually lying, because I've been getting that question sometimes when we craft a resume, that it's a little bit different than people's jobs experience or employment history. Is it clear what I said about what I'm trying to convey about the why should we hire you, why it's different, and the other questions and the framework that you should use to answer them? All right. Mark says that he's clear on that. Oh, we got more ones. All right, cool. All right, so interview questions, exercise closed. There's some good answers from you guys, some answers that needed work, but that's great because that's precisely what we're here for. So now let me explain briefly what constitutes lying on your resume, and when are you lying on your resume, and when isn't lying on your resume, okay? So first, we need to have a little bit of framework to understand. All right, Daniel, we can talk later. We have a bit of a framework to understand what is and isn't lying, right? So saying something that is not necessary, like omitting something that is true, or saying something that is not, let's say, strictly, the exact truth of the matter. Sometimes it is lying and sometimes it isn't. When isn't, and when, what determines, what's the difference, right? Because sometimes we're so used to thinking that just saying something that does not conform strictly to the actual, to the truth of the matter situation, that's immediately lying. And that is not technically correct. The reason is that, for instance, you don't, let's say you're playing basketball, right? If you make or any other like team sport, like soccer, something like that. If you make a feint, right? Like if you feint, you're going to like the left, but your intention is going to the right. Your intention here is to deceive your opponent, right? You have created, you have conveyed an intention that is false, meaning you moving to the left, when your real intention was you moving to the right, right? Or maybe you're the quarterback, you feign like you're going to throw the ball when your intention is like picking it up and running, okay? In war, this is obvious, right? Like, you're a general in an army, whatever, you're conducting a war. Are you lying to the enemy? Are you lying because you don't broadcast your every move to the enemy? Are you lying because you make the enemy think one thing while the reality is other? I mean, most people, like, we wouldn't say like, yeah, that's a lie. Especially, I mean, maybe war is, maybe we have like a pacifist, right? And they're like against war and like, no, everything that happens in war is wrong. Okay, whatever. What about like a simple sports game? Right? What about a simple sports game? Are you lying when you make a feint? Like when you feint, you're going in one direction, but your intention is going in another. We usually don't think that's lying. Like we just think, oh, that's part of the game. Another example, daily life. Are you lying by omission if like a stranger asks you, on the street, he asks you like, hey, how are you doing? Hey man, how are you doing? And you're not doing fine. Like you're not doing well at all. Like you are despondent, you are sad, whatever. You're not well at all. Is it lying if you just tell this stranger, like, or even like mild acquaintance, right? Like just a casual acquaintance, like, yeah, no, I'm doing fine, man. Thank you. Is that lying? Just because you're not giving the full account of your inner workings? We usually don't think about that. We don't think those things constitute lying. And the reason is that we often don't discuss a particular aspect, the context that makes, or the key thing that makes saying something a lie or not a lie. Because it's very funny. Again, I'm Catholic, because even St. Thomas Aquinas says that you can even lie with the truth, right? Like you can tell somebody the truth with the intention to deceive them or make them, I don't know, sometimes you tell somebody the truth and because it will affect them negatively, and they either won't believe you or something. Like we even have this special distinction, like you can even lie with the truth. So what makes lying lying? What makes lying is you keeping the truth from a party, or a particular truth that the party that your interlocutor deserves to know, right? So somebody that is owed the truth, you keep that from them, or you give them the opposite of what is true. That is lying, because they were owed the truth. Okay. So that this is why when you're in a game, right, like you're playing basketball, we don't consider lying when you feint, right? Like when you make a feint, because the opponent is not owed your entire game plan, right? The opponent is not owed knowing exactly what direction you're going to take and who you're going to pass to. That misdirection, that ruse, like David is saying in the chat, is part of the game. Like the opponent is not owed your full game plan. As a matter of fact, the game plan of no sport is the game plan of each team publicly available. They hide it. Like they go to great lengths to hide their game plans. Our sports teams, right? Like even in little league, whatever game, little children lie. Like no, that's not a lie. And so it's the same with the stranger, with the acquaintance on the street. Like, are you lying to this? Like, are you lying when you just say that you're fine? Like, when you're not fine? Like, no, because this stranger, this acquaintance is not owed a detailed explanation of your inner state, right? Like they just deserve like a cordial. They're basically just being cordial. They don't, as a matter of fact, they don't deserve it so much that they don't really care. Like they're just giving you a hello. You respond to me that hello as well. Okay. So now, what was the point of all this philosophical talk? Okay. So this is just the groundwork. This is just the groundwork, the context to understand what a resume is. All right. So, and what is owed to the employer. Right. So number one, employers are not owed every single detail of your life, even your work experience, not at all. Like they're not owed any of that. What are they owed? They're owed the truth of the sense of like, can you do the work? Right. Like what the purpose of the resume, right? Like when you give a resume, when you hand a resume to an employer, the question that the employer is asking, which the answer for is the resume, is like, can you do this job, right? Like I have this whatever job that I need done. Can you do it, right? So, right, if you're like if the job is like being like a surgeon, and you're not a surgeon, right? Like something very specific, something that requires very detailed knowledge, and furthermore that people's lives are at stake, then yeah, you don't want to pass yourself as a surgeon, right? And that's usually why we also tie like we make it very hard for people to lie about that as well. Okay, like about doctors have to get they have licenses and they could lose their license for doing whatever, and like you could go to jail if you impersonate a doctor, that sort of stuff. Like we have developed a very strict legal mechanisms to regulate people lying on these because the consequences are real. But when we're talking about like regular white collar jobs, that, to be frank, in my experience, most like high schoolers with some training could do. So like if we use like one word, like if you're like, and this is an example, I'm not trying to put anybody on the spot, but this is a recent example from one of our customers, and the one that kind of like prompted this like me wanting to have this discussion with you guys. If you're like an actuary, right, and you want to be an analyst, like what's like you can do the analyst job, like changing the word on your resume, like saying that you're an analyst instead of being like a data analyst instead of like an actuary or something like that. You can do the job. Like you are rightly answering the question. Can you, like the employer is asking, I have this, I have this job requirement. Like I have this job description. Can you do it? You hand them a resume that says yes in a way that they will accept. That's simply what it's done, right? Like that is not lying on your resume. You're correctly answering the question of yes, you can do the job, right? So now, if you were to try to pass yourself off as like a like an astrophysicist, something that requires very specific knowledge that you're not going to be able to like learn just by getting the training, right? Like you're an astrophysicist, like a bridge builder, something like that. I don't know, something that is very specific and also people's lives are at stake. Yeah, don't pass yourself off as that sort of stuff. But most white collar jobs, are basically the same thing. Like they require kind of like the same core skills. And unfortunately, employers, not only are they very entitled about what they require, like they're over entitled about what they giving the opportunity to anybody. They don't train anybody. There's no system. You know how in school, like if you're transferring from one school to the other, there's a way to like count the credits or like make them the same, right? Like there's no system for that in real life for employment, right? Like there's no system where an employer can take, they have a requirement for whatever AWS or like Amazon marketing, and they can take the resume from somebody that did marketing on some other platform, and they could like say, oh, like this is the same thing. Like there's nothing like that, right? So the one thing that you can do to not lose those opportunities is simply kind of like embellishing your resume. But as long as the answer is true, as long as the question that you're answering truly the question of like, hey, can you do this job? Even if you just need a little bit of training, like after you get that training, then the answer, kind of like the resume becomes true. This is something also that I found. Like if you prove yourself that you can, like if you get hired, right, like with a fake resume, you get hired and then you start doing the job, then the resume became true. Like you were able to do the job, right? All these other stuff, like employers just make wild, crazy claims because because they can't get away with it. There's no other reason for this. Like they can require master's degree to do like basic word processing, right? Like data entry. They can require years of experience when there's no need, right? Like they can, because they shouldn't, right? Like that's why I'm saying like it's not ethical, like it's not valid. Like the claim is not valid, right? Like the core question is, can you do this job? Most people. Well, I shouldn't say most people, like, right? Like if you can do it, that's it, right? But they put all these other hurdles. So that's why it's kind of like you ask most people that are in this space of like, advising people looking for work and that sort of stuff. And this subject always comes up of like lying on your resume. And the answer, the polite, I'm giving you the philosophical answer. The polite answer, all these other people that you're going to encounter, it's always going to be like, play the game. You got to play the game. Employers are crazy out of hand. Like they've gotten out of hand with the requirement. So that's the answer basically. With that, I'll read your comments a little bit and then we can go into questions and answers for a few minutes. All right, let's see. Rob was saying, what about putting in details pertaining to companies you may not have worked for? It's the same thing. It doesn't matter. Like they don't get to, like, they're not owed all those details. Like all they need to know is that you can do the job, and that's it. Like where did you do the job, and like by who, and like it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Like what matters is you can do the job. Like is it true that you have this experience, or like you have most of this experience and you could learn what's left, right? Like yes, okay. The problem is that so here's the other problem. The problem is that employers are so entitled, like they're also very finicky. Like they don't give you a chance. Like if you can't have conversations with them, they're not human entities, right? Like I'm not. They're like this, like they're bureaucracies in a sense. You don't negotiate without bureaucracy. Like you can't, like this is a problem of, this is a mental problem that, well, I don't know, I should say a mentality problem that a lot of people have, or most people, actually, I'm confident saying most people have in the job market, which is this thing of like, they think their employer is like a human being they can explain things to, or like a prospective employer that they can explain things to. Employees don't care. They just don't want any trouble. They want to cover their ass. They want to hire somebody that it's not going to give them any problems, right? Like that, or the least amount of problems. They're not going to have to train. They don't have to invest anything in them, right? That's what they want. So if you have to explain yourself, like, let me explain the gap on my resume. Let me explain why, even though I'm applying, like my experience is in this title, I'm applying for this other thing because I can actually do the same thing. It's like, no, like you don't get those chances, right? Like you do not get those chances with employers. You just have to get your foot in the door and let them disqualify you. You have to you don't disqualify yourself. You play the game, you try to get in, they disqualify you. And if they don't disqualify you, then dude, like that's it. Like you passed their filters. You proved that you could at least get the job. And then if they don't fire you, you prove that you could do the job. So they have to disqualify you. Okay. And this is the other thing, like, especially in the United States, maybe, some of you guys are in Canada, so maybe this is a bit different because I know Canada has some more protections for employees, but in the United States, this is outrageous because employers firing people, it's basically free in the United States. Like you don't have to prove anything. It's at will employment. You can get fired. Like they can hire somebody that can get fired immediately for whatever reason, or they can somebody could have been working for years in the company. They can get fired for any reason, right? At will employment. So it's like, you're doing all this dancing for the employee before they hire you, and then they can just fire you unceremoniously, right? Like just summary firing. It's just like, no, dude, like just play the game, let them disqualify you. If you pass the interview that they created, that they are running, you pass their filter. if you can do the work, not get fired, meet their targets, to be productive as they're expecting, you prove that you could do the job. That's it. All right. So this is a good question. Like being a subcontractor for a more notable company. Oh, you're talking about the putting details in. No, you want, again, you don't want to have to explain anything. You don't want to have to explain that you were a subcontractor or anything. You want to, the best chances are when you present yourself as somebody very consistent that just worked for the employers their whole life and didn't didn't hop around and didn't have gaps or anything. Like the less you have to explain, the better. These are, again, employees are not humans that are your friends that you owe all these sort of explanations. All they're owed is, can you do this job? I need this job done. Can you do it? Yes, sir. All right, let me put you on trial to see. Let me put you on trial to, well, not on trial, but you know what I mean. Let's give you a trial run of how you perform to see if you can actually do it. Like employers do all that, and then they fire you. That's the thing. Like you're not even costing that much money to the employer, right? Like they get to fire basically for free. So it's not like, again, like you're compromised, like you're putting the employer in this very awkward compromising position where they're just like screwed because now they're stuck with you. Like, no, if it doesn't work out, you get fired. That's it. That's it. Like getting fired is the real measure of, can you do this job? Are you meeting the productivity targets that the employer wants? Let's see. Rob says unrelated, but with regards to the market right now, are you finding it hard to find fully remote opportunities as opposed to hybrid ones? I mean, Canada, is it probably tougher than in the US to find fully remote jobs? Yes. So the job market in Canada is, historically going to be worse than the United States. I think I think it's very hard. I think it's very hard to compare any market to the one in the United States. The United States is such a big economy. Because of this thing of like employer, you can get fired very easily. The job market tends to be more dynamic. And right now, what's happening is not that there are more hybrid positions than fully remote. Well, I mean, let's say that yes, there are more hybrid positions than fully remote ones. That doesn't mean that there aren't fully remote ones. And the other thing is that you have to keep in mind that a lot of hybrid positions can be negotiated, up to fully remote. So there's no reason to kind of like despair or anything of the sort. Like we're not in the golden age of the pandemic, right? Like where everybody was remote, but that doesn't mean there aren't any remote jobs there. And again, like Canada is going to be harder than the United States, but that's just generally true. And it doesn't mean that there's no opportunities or anything of the sort, right? Like it's still a developed economy. There's still a healthy job market within, again, like if you're comparing to the United States, it's kind of tough, but there's still a job market available for professionals and for white collar professionals. So it's just a matter of being disciplined, being open to the opportunities coming to you, and negotiating those. If you're seeing what you're seeing in your job hunt is that there's like only hybrid roles or like most of what you see, just be open to being able to, just apply to them anyway, and be open about the possibility of converting them to fully remote, because you can. That's the thing, right? I guess what I'm trying to convey is that a lot of employers are secretly willing to make a job be fully remote, but they don't want to necessarily advertise it as fully remote. They want you to go to the office a little bit, but if pressured enough, or like if given the right opportunity, the right candidate, they will allow it to be fully remote. So it's a matter of you presenting yourself as the right